Hi, this is Karen. Welcome, guys. Welcome, Eric, today, Eric DuPont. He's with me today, one of my other magical friends. And Eric has quite the interesting background. Let me do a little introduction for you so you can get to know his background. He's a multidisciplined healer who moonlighted as an international airline pilot, flying heavy equipment worldwide for 3 decades. Eric is an avid researcher, eternally curious, who has explored free energy, gravity engineering, and healing modalities for the past 20 years. Those are quite interesting hobbies.
They're
He
kind of fun.
is a specialist who works with the multi-dimensional aspects of the human experience. He teaches and assists people in tapping into their own power of healing their life physically, mentally, emotionally, and quite frankly, multi-dimensionally. He works with non-invasive modalities such as Pangu Shenggong, personalized codes he channels, and a genius consciousness assisted technology allowing him to scan and harmonize the biofield. Eric also uses healing integration therapy as taught by the angelic realm Geschichte. And welcome, Eric. Thanks
Well,
for
thank you,
joining me
Karin.
today.
Thanks for having me. This is wonderful. I love the format of your interview. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. You've been a huge inspiration helping me get out there and do some videos and share our content. So I really appreciate your encouragement, and it's been great to get this project rolling and to get
Well, I agree.
everything.
That's what it's all about. I mean, we encourage one another, and so you've been instrumental too. So it's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of backgrounds in common. We both are students of Angel Geschichte. We both have taken class Energy Workers Academy with Keith Coley, and we both practice Pangu Shingon. And so I think those are kind of really important baselines for our energy work. So I just wanted to I wanted everybody to kind of get to know you a little bit more about your background. How did you get into energy work? What drew you into that? What was going on in your life that had you interested in that?
Well, sure. And first and foremost, it seems like, as you like to call us, we are kind of magical friends, and I like to call us energetic nerds. So that kind of sets the tone for for what we are talking about. Um,
Absolutely.
you know, you had mentioned something about spiritual, and to me, spiritual is kind of a word that is overused. It's a little bit like quantum this and quantum that. It's a new age world people like to throw around, but everything is spirit. All is spiritual. So I understand what people mean when saying a spiritual, maybe start of something, but spirituality to me is just life. It's kind of asking, well, what were you doing before you existed? It's kind of a moot point, but I guess it all started for me. I like to see it as an awareness, like you exist, you evolve, you live, but you're not exactly sure because you're part of what everybody else is doing, and you don't know what your space in the world is. And eventually, I would imagine everybody kind of question things a little bit and wonders like, hey, what is this life about? Why is it? Now, if I want to go further back than that, I'll remember I was probably 14 or 15, and I was in a store. I grew up in Europe, so I was in a library, and I was always interested in esoteric books. Not that I knew exactly what I was looking for, but I was always on that shelf, always looking for stuff. And I found this little yellow book that was a dowsing book. It was telling you about pendulums and dowsing rods. And I purchased this thing and I devoured the book and I read through it many, many times. And especially over the years, I kept going back to it. And so that was maybe the start for me of really, well, this is kind of funky. This is a little bit like magic. And what is this about? What can you do with it? And somehow always gravitated towards even older people than me at the time, adults. And I was always having those conversations about, hey, about dowsing, pendulums, this and that. How does that work? So I was always curious about that. And I always had the thought, well, gee, what if our little planet over here, us as human beings, are just a tiny particle, part of maybe, I don't know, the foot or the heel of some higher being of some sort somewhere. And so I had all those crazy thoughts, and it didn't make any sense, quite frankly, but it was kind of a childish way to look at things. So
Mm.
that was early on, and as you mentioned in the intro, I used to fly airplanes around the world for 2, 3 decades, 3 decades, and that really opened up not only a great amount of time for me to contemplate different ideas and also to go to workshop and talk to people, but also meet different people from around the world. I can truly say my friends and family is worldwide, and it's been really fun to have all of those perspectives coalescing in one. And so I was always interested in religions, in hearing what made people tick and what their thoughts were. And I was always looking for the common core, the commonality between all of them. And it was very clear from early on to me that all of the religions, when you took all of the dogma out, when you took all of the traditions out, the core was all the same.
Mm.
And I was really interested also in physics and chemistry and the sciences, but I soon discovered that the sciences, the way we are taught, are kind of bogus. I mean, it's all book knowledge that is not really based in much, and the really juicy stuff is nowhere to be found in the school, in the university, or anywhere else. It's people like you and me who decide to. They have a thought, they investigate, they come up with something, and that's really truly the advances in science. And what I noticed is like science was very much of a religion, as
Mm.
much as religion sometimes wanted to use science to its own benefit, yet always with an ulterior motive. So it's not like I'm anti-religion. As a matter of fact, I think they're nice goalposts for people to hang their hat onto, so they have kind of a path. It doesn't mean you have to stay on the path. You can always go left and go right and explore. But I was always interested in all of that. And that's kind of what awakened in me a desire to know more. And as soon as I realized that we were really vibrational beings in human form, that we are light and sound vibrating and coalescing into this density that we call our bodies, that we were more than just the body we are, to me, that was an exciting understanding. And I always wanted to discover more. It's like, well, okay, I have the concept, but how do I internalize that? How do I really feel this? How do I feel energy? People are talking about energy, but what is this? So all those were the questions that I had. And because I was flying airplanes and I enjoyed just being, 45,000 feet up in the air and kind of be on the verge between space and Earth, kind of. I like that global view, but I also love to think of free energy. How could we power the entire planet and have free energy for the world? How could we have gravity engineering? How is it that, as fun as it is to fly a Boeing 747 around the world, how is it that in, call it 2020, we still burning fossil fuels in a can to propel something into space? To me, that didn't make much sense. Um, Healing modalities. How is it that you go to a doctor, you receive a pill, or somebody snips a part of you to kind of quote fix you? None of this made sense to me. And so my approach in my jumping into what we were talking about really came in a roundabout way through exploring free energy, exploring gravity engineering, and I realized that even exotic healing modalities, they all had one thing in common, and that was consciousness. Consciousness is what powers all of it. And so I dove right in, and that was the rest is history. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, studied with Keith and Angel, Geschichte, many other teachers. I mean, I've had so many mentors and teachers and people like, it's a bit of a cliche, but you're really standing on the shoulders of giants. And to me, that's what it's all about. Because when I look at the fantastic work that Angel is doing, it didn't come easy. I mean, it certainly is a journey for all of us. So I love the exploration. I hope it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, you came into it in a different way. Most people come into it through their own pain or illness or brokenness, and so you had a totally different approach to it. So it's very interesting.
Well, maybe it's not so different because now that you mentioned that, you asked me about my debut, so to speak, and what brought me to this point. But I did have an event that was very much of a catalyst to propel me into what I'm doing right now, which is actually a health event. Um,
Mm.
you know, flying for 3 decades around the world, high altitudes, no sleep, is really hard on what I love to call the meat suit, the body. And I became ill. I reached a point in 2018 where I could no longer fly an airplane. I couldn't hold a medical certificate. So I had to withdraw from something that was both a passion, a lifestyle, a source of income. I mean, it was my life for a long, long time. And all of a sudden, no pun intended, but it's like going 3,000 miles an hour and just coming to a screeching halt, hitting a wall, being between your four walls at home, not doing what you used to doing. So that was a major psychological, emotional change. And
Yeah.
with that came a lot of upheavals and a lot of contemplation and the need to reassess and reevaluate things. And so certainly that really propelled me deep into the work that I'm doing because I knew that through my journey of trying to figure out what was, I'm not going to say wrong with me because there's never anything wrong with anyone, but
Right.
with the experience that I was having that was really getting my attention, that was not really good from a physical perspective. Nobody, either in the allopathic medical realm, which I never had much, you know, I didn't put too much weight in that direction, but at least I had to check those boxes to satisfy the powers that be, the FA, and that sort of stuff. But when I was looking at the alternative spectrum of modalities, some that are more traditional alternative and some that are really off the wall, if it existed and I knew about it or found out about it, I tried it. So I literally spent a fortune, probably at least an Ivy League university degree's worth of chasing things around to not really finding answer. And I knew that the answer had to come from me, had to come from within. I had to search for that. And through that research and the background that I had, both flying, both with the healing modalities and with gravity engineering, that sort of research, I kind of put all that together. And I discovered that I had some abilities to help some people because of my journey,
Right.
because of what I had gone through. I could literally walk in their shoes and I could resonate and they could resonate with me. And so that's been really empowering. And I figured, look, I need a source of income and I love doing this and I'm still exploring. It's a journey that you're always on that never ends. So I may as well dive in, and here we are.
Yeah.
So, in a roundabout way, yes, I came from a different perspective, but there's also this aspect of upheaval that causes you to, I don't know if I can say up level, that's a little bit of a new age term, but
Right.
to
Yeah.
literally, just
Expansion.
reorganize, expand and reorganize. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Expand and reorganize. That's a good way to put it. I can certainly relate to that. I had a corporate job where I traveled for 10 years. So I was in the back of the plane, but it was brutal. It was brutal. And I got laid off from that job in 2010. And I just woke up and was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, and my neighbors didn't even know me. I lived in this urban downtown building, and they were like, "Are you the dog walker? Who are you?" I was walking my dogs, and they only knew my husband and the dogs, and so they never seen me because I was always gone. So I was kind of lost in my own world by just always being on the road and having to figure out who am I and what am I all about. So it was a big. Sounds pretty similar to what you were talking about. So
I certainly know what you're feeling because it's almost like you do not exist for most of society. It's like, really? You
yeah,
have a spouse? Is it just a name? Because we don't believe they exist. We never see
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Do you know the
yeah. So
names? Exactly.
it's like meeting your life, all over again when you come off the road and you're like, oh, what am I doing here? And I haven't really traveled much since then, and I like to travel, but I certainly don't want to get on an airplane anymore. So oh well.
I totally understand and second that the craziness of the world currently and um,
Yeah,
it's a little bit odd, but for someone who's been flying airplane for many years, I also refuse to get on an airplane because I refuse to mask up or take in a bioweapon. So
Me too.
that's pretty clear to me. So
Yeah, me too. I don't want to suffocate myself for the sake of traveling. So I'll just get in the
absolutely.
car and just safely get there without hurting myself. So anyway, let's see. So describe your cultivation of your skills. What do you what have you learned, and what kind of how many years have you been learning the energy work, and what are how long have you been a student of Geshiktas, and just
Sure.
explain like your cultivation, like what do you do to stay healthy and be strong as an energy worker?
Absolutely. Well, tongue in cheek, but I started energy work the moment I was born, so we all do, and I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. That's true. We're probably better at it when we're kids.
Yeah, we were more open. We're not questioning things. We haven't been indoctrinated yet, so things are much smoother and work much better. But many, many years ago, I started practicing Pangu Shenggong, and that was a major practice, and it still is the core of my practice because I don't need to tell you that without life force, we're nothing. This is what animates us. Without life force, we're not in existence. And most of us, at least I can speak for myself for the longest time, especially when you burn a candle from both ends in your job, you running on fumes. You really have so little life force and you're so used to it that you don't realize it. As a matter of fact, most, not everybody, but most clients that I have the privilege of working with, when they come to me for the first time, they're so depleted in life force and for the most part do not even have a concept of what life force is. So they have no idea how depleted they are. So this easy to practice, very efficient form called Pangu Shenggong is a cultivation and condensing form that allows anyone who practices it to really increase their storage capacity of life force. It's like having a battery in a, you just make sure it's charged all the time, topped off, so you can just apprehend life and have enough not only for yourself but also to help others. And so it's my core practice, whether just for myself to make sure that I stay healthy, that I have a good immune system, that every systems in my body, including all of my fields, my emotional aspects, are powered properly. And then I have some extra so that I can also work what the magical friends do, which is work the magic with other people.
Sure.
So that's in a nutshell. That's my energetic practice. Of course, I was extremely active also, jogging, that sort of stuff. But it's a fine line. Exercise is wonderful up to a certain point. You reach a point of negative returns if you push it too hard, also. But it comes along with knowing oneself. If you don't know who you are and you don't know what your reaction is, it's very easy for people to either do nothing, and that's not a great thing to do either, or go all out and burn yourself. So it's a happy medium. It's nutrition also. Um,
Hmm.
what we take in is very important. We are assaulted by so many toxins in the world, whether it's air pollution, food toxins, bioweapons. I mean, let's look around us these days.
Yeah.
Fear put on society, all of those things are, um, all those energies drain your life force. So unless you have a way to condense and cultivate more life force to replenish that, then you're deficient. And when you're deficient, things start to break down. You may not feel uh, top. You may start feeling more apathetic. You may have, whatever people experience, and eventually something breaks down and you have symptoms. And most people attribute those symptoms to, well, it's getting older, or,
Hmm.
it happens to everybody. And the answer is yes and no. No, because it doesn't have to be this way. If we have more awareness in our life, and if we can cultivate this life force, if we can be mindful of our life, of our thoughts, of our emotions, of our relationship with ourselves first and with others, then life unfolds in a much smoother way. And quite frankly, I'm not perfect about it. I'm the first one to say that I did not do a lot of those things. So I allowed myself to get into a hole and then had to climb out of it to relearn those aspects. But having learned those aspects and continuing to learn those aspects, now I have more ability to expand and teach and share with those who may be receptive and who may benefit from that experience. And I think that's what I appreciate with you, with Angel, with Keith, and all the people around us. We all have something to bring to one another. It's kind of iron sharpening iron, if you will. We all have something to bring forth that we can use. So, and
Definitely.
we were better for it. So.
Yeah, and it's important to have to have momentum going in the right direction when you're healing yourself, because you're going to slip up as you're starting a new, path. And to keep that momentum going, we have to work on that all the time. We can't let our momentum slide on our healthy habits and our qigong and just stop doing it, because it's a slippery slope, and then we're going to lose our own health, and then we're not going to be beneficial to others. So I always say, like, we're the first responders, right? So I want to be ready at all times with my qigong practice and with my schedule to be able to help people on the fly, because people get sick really quickly and they need help. Sometimes, you don't get much notice when you're an energy worker. You get a text and somebody's in trouble and we all jump in. And our group as practitioners with Keith, we have a messaging system, and we've done that for years. And whenever we're in trouble, we jump on and help each other. And so I like that we have that community, and that we're always keeping ourselves very fit in that way. It's a life force fitness, if you will. It's just a way to describe it. So I think
Yeah, I
it's
love your way of
important.
describing it as first responders. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's like 24/7 on-call energy worker, if you will. It's like, okay, you need help, we're here, but
Yeah.
you cannot give what you don't already have yourself. So hence the
Right.
cultivation aspects, so for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why it takes a lot more than what the client sees for us to do in a session. We have to prepare before the session. We have to prepare after the session to, take care of ourselves so that we have enough power to transform in a session and help them. And then after we've absorbed the dysfunction in a session, we're, on the back end helping ourselves again to transform all that energy. So I think that's, just a little insight into what it's like to be the magical people.
Yes, and it's a really good point that you make. Very few people realize, and how could they? Uh,
Yeah, they wouldn't know.
we practice, and I would venture to say the same for you, and I know for many others in our group, 2 to 3 hours of energy cultivation a day. And that's just even to do one session with a person. So there's a lot that goes into it. And quite frankly, I mean, I was one of those people who had no idea. Before I knew anything about this, I would not have known. It's like, okay, I'm having a session with somebody, great.
Yeah,
But I never knew exactly what went into doing a session like this. So it's
yeah,
pretty involved, yes.
it is pretty involved. Yeah. So tell me more about your practice as an energy worker, um, the modalities you use, and what types of clients that you see. And
Sure. Well, that has evolved quite a bit also, along with my personal evolution, because I started with using a lot of equipment, which I'm just going to gloss over because I'm not really using it at the moment. It was in-person equipment using cold plasma technology, using exotic um, life force-based technologies, Rife machine, and that sort of stuff. But I was very much interested in honing my own skills, my own ability to perceive energy, to wield energy, transform, alchemize. Uh, because let's face it, when I talk about free energy, we are the free energy devices, all of us. Now, we may not always recognize it or have the ability to tap into it, but the more we develop this awareness, the more we actually tap into those capabilities, become those magical friends, and wield that power, of course, for a good purpose. I always take power with a grain of salt. Just it's the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it for the well-being of humanity, your clients, yourself, etc., etc. So the modalities I'm currently using are kind of a three-prong approach for me. There's the life force cultivation condensing that we just mentioned, the Pangu Shengon, which is both cultivating, so working on your own core, but also allows you to do some healing work with other people. That's one. The second one is a consciousness-based technology that you mentioned earlier called the Genius. And I really call it a consciousness-based technology because it is a piece of software. It works on a piece of hardware also. So it is technology. But the wisdom of it, the juice that powers it, is the life force of the individual along with the intentionality. So I like to see the Genius as a third-party intermediary, kind of an objective piece of equipment that is between the client and the practitioner, that allows, like an interface, that allows you to assess the biofield of the person, find out what discordant frequencies may exist, and you have the ability to then harmonize the biofield of the person. And why is it important? Well, since we mentioned earlier that we are really vibrational beings, we are light and sound vibrating in a certain geometric pattern, also called sacred geometry. Um, Nobody ever heals anyone, including doctors. And I'm not a doctor. I call myself a healer. I'm really a reminder of a state of being of wellness for people. That's the way I like to see myself. So when I work with a client, I'm really doing my best to assess their fields. And from the discordance that I notice, then I can harmonize the field so the body has the environment it needs to do what it does best, which is heal itself. Because again, it's all a permission slip. I don't care what modality anybody uses. It's just a reminder for the person, and it's the person themselves that start doing the work and that starts healing.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell. And of course, you mentioned the codes. So codes are packets of information that you can channel, and they're like numbers, one, twos, and threes, and fives, and six, and whatever, just a string of numbers that represent a state of being. And when you introduce that new state of being in the field, which is an optimal state of being for the person relative to a particular subject, there's an entrainment that takes place. And the discordant energy within the field start reorganizing in training to the optimal model until you reach homeostasis. And of course, the more subtle aspects of the biofield trickle down into density, and the body eventually heals itself. So I'm just providing the environment. That's in a nutshell the modalities I'm using, but I'm also adding some other parts to it. And they're not any less. As a matter of fact, I absolutely love using those. One is healing integration therapy, or we call it HIT for short. I know you're very familiar with it. It is
Yeah.
extremely powerful. As a practitioner, the energy is undeniable. You can feel it, you can sense it, you can feel it mold. And what that allows me to do is to take any discordant energy within the client, at least whatever energy the client is willing to give to me momentarily, and then I can transform it and alchemize it, clean it up basically, and hand it back to them in a clean state. Now, of course, there's always some energetic patterns, some habits that we all have, and unless you change those habits, it is possible that you would slide back. But in a cumulative aspect, over time, you can really alchemize and create changes that are persistent until you become literally a new person. You have a new state of being.
Yes. Yes. It takes, I guess, time and like we were talking about before, momentum with these healing modalities. And just one treatment won't necessarily make you better overnight, depending on what you're treating. If it's, an acute illness, it could take time for all that to kind of flush itself out. And you might need, one or two treatments in a day, day and a half. But if it's something like an emotional problem or a long, ingrained habit that someone has established, um, we were talking with Gashita about self-respect, which is one thing I'm working on. And so if it's something ingrained like that, there has to be, time has to go by to work on those deeper issues within us.
Absolutely. And if something that I learned, I guess the point was driven home by Gushita to me quite often, and I very much resonate with it experientially also, is that you need to take an action to crystallize a change. So having the thought, the idea, the cognitive ability to apprehend circumstances, to understand what's going on with us is fantastic. It's the start. But unless you change the habit and you take an action to crystallize the change, it's just what I like to call mental masturbation. So it really has to come from the heart, and it has to be an emotional change that takes place. And healing integration therapy is just fantastic at achieving that.
It really
And it's a
is.
work in progress.
That modality is taught by the angelic realm Gashita, and they also teach emotional alchemy. And so us as students take that class first. So you learn how to alchemize emotions, and then you learn the healing integration therapy. And they're not the same thing modality wise at all, but just explaining a little bit about what it's like to be a student of Gashita's. And that is such a powerful, I use that healing technique the most because I feel like it gets the best results, and it's fast, and yeah, it's effective. It's really, really effective. And if I use it on myself, I'll sing, the song to myself for things that I have. You can use the treatments on yourself too, the code treatments. Um, and yeah, there's just sometimes you need a different treatment for a different case. You can't always get the patient, the client. You can't always use the same approach on each client and get the same results. Sometimes, the codes are really good for quick movement of energy, quick stabilization. They seem to, I feel like, work really fast compared to the HIT treatment, but that's just been my experience. But
Well,
it's still alchemizing the dysfunctional energy in those numbers. It's taking it from dysfunction to harmony. So that's what they're all doing. It's just a matter of
yeah, the core is similar with all of it. It's just different modalities, different roads to lead to Rome, so to speak.
Mhm.
Uh, but I also noticed that the healing integration therapy is so broad and encompassing that it works in all circumstances, and if anything enhances some other modalities that you may use to maybe more finely target certain aspects. And as practitioners, you mentioned it, I mean, everything is personalized when you work with a client. There's not
Yeah,
one approach that fits all, but we also bring our own slant, our own perspective on things. So although we may be using the same tools, we're not providing um, the same session. I'm not
yeah,
going to call it treatment because we're not medical practitioners, but the working with the energy is going to be slightly different with all of us because we bring in our personality and our capabilities and our flavor, if you will.
yeah,
What
our
I
own
like,
life force.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Hmm.
and that's true. And our own ability to diagnose a problem. So, just to talk more about treatments and how they work. So we're going to diagnose the problem with the patient first. We're going to feel the energies, and then we're going to go to work on what's disharmonious and or what is stagnant. Where the energy stagnates is where it's disharmonious. So I've learned, through Keith to feel into that and feel the stagnation in different, systems and fields and organs and all those things that we check on people. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about like, what does a session look like, you know?
Yes, and you bring all excellent point, and I'm not surprised since we all practitioners, and you bring a wonderful practice to the table. So obviously you know what you're talking about. The what I find interesting in the session is that we know that we can feel the energy and transform the energy and cleaning up and effect change.
Mhm.
Sometimes the person in front of you or remotely, if it's done remotely, know something is happening because they can feel it. But sometimes they don't because everybody's a different level in their life. And so there's a little bit of a faith component to it for the recipient. Not always, but quite often. And what I found is that when you can explain things, kind of bridge the gap between the very much esoteric type of sessions we do and their general understanding that let's frankly call it comes from allopathic medicine for the most part. When you can bridge that gap, they have something to grab onto, then
Mhm.
there is more buy-in into the system. And let's face it, it's all about entanglement of energies. When I work with you, you work with me, our energy starts mixing. There's an entanglement taking place. So it's important for the person to have a buy-in. In other words, to know that what we're doing is going to be beneficial to them. Because if they know that, the likelihood of being beneficial is high. If they're already, yeah, I'm not so sure. Somebody told me about it. I came, but I don't really believe in any of that stuff. You're going to be efficient. You're going to be able to move the energy. But whether they recognize it and whether they reap the most benefit out of it, that's a little bit different. And that's where one of the great aspects of the genius comes in is that when you and I feel the energy, say, okay, there's stagnation in the liver, or there is very low energy, the kidneys are depleted, or something like that, as an example. That's great, but for a lot of people, it's like, all right, this is kind of weird. That's some weird stuff. I hear you, but I don't know.
Yeah.
However, when you can actually do an assessment and you can flesh out, give them the big picture, the bird's eye view of what's happening with them at a physical level, mental, emotional, all encompassing. And then you go into some libraries and you can flesh out the details of what may be happening. You're not performing a diagnosis or a diagnostic because we're not doctors. This is not the kind of tool. But on the contrary, it's a piece of equipment that allows you to see um, any vibrational imprint within the field that may be discordant. That could be from a past illness or a past issue that could be expressed currently, and the person may or may not have symptoms, or it could be something in their field that, should the person stay on the same trajectory, could express itself with some symptom. So it's a fantastic crystal ball of sort that allows you to, okay, there's a disturbance. The answer is always, let's harmonize it. If we harmonize it, chances are, if there's something wrong right now, it's going to resolve itself. And if it's something that could be happening in the future, well, if you kind of nip it in the bud, so to speak, right off the bat, then it won't have a chance to develop into something else. So, a fantastic tool of awareness that gets the buy in from the customer, not to mention that your client has now the ability to harmonize their own frequencies from the comfort of their own home. So, it's not just a session that you're having with them at the moment. They have the benefit of your energy of what you're doing, but now they have a practitioner in their pocket because if they have an iPhone, an Android, an iPad, one of those devices, they can now play those frequencies anytime they want
Right.
for a full week until the next session. So it's an extremely powerful tool, not to substitute, but in conjunction with healing integration therapy, the cultivation of life force. My goal with a any of my client is always to empower the client. It's always to empower the person into realizing more of who they are, because when they do, I do as well. We kind of bring each other up.
Oh,
It's
nice.
not a
Yeah.
one-way street. The practitioner receives as much as he gives or she gives within a session. It's always the entanglement. And Pangu Shengam is a great example. It's something that you cannot make somebody do it.
No.
When you share it with somebody and they realize for themselves how powerful it is, the changes occurring within them, then they can only decide to do it or not do it. And quite frankly, I think they'd be silly not to do it. And most of them, I think, once they've experienced it, are believers and actually practice it and see the results. And just that alone, if it was just to practice Pangu Shengon, can create major shifts and changes in the life of anyone. And
Absolutely.
when you use that in conjunction with other modalities, such as the ones we've talked about, I mean, you have extremely powerful tools that I would say dwarf anything in existence right now on the planet, at least any traditional um, modalities.
I agree wholeheartedly with all that. Yeah, it's great. And it just, the energy the energy has to heal first before the physical body heals. So, just to explain, like when we work on energy, we're working on the precursor to the physical ailment. So when you heal the energy part of it, because your fields are, you have more than one field, you have more than just a body. And so your consciousness and all your other fields are what we are working on. And so it prevents the physical symptom that you have, that you might be about to have, if you will, because physicality is the last energetic expression. So I just want to kind of jump in with that.
Yes, and quite often, especially if it's a first time person to energy healing or this kind
Yeah,
of work, um, you hear a lot. Well, I've got this aching, or I got this problem, I've got X, Y, Z, and we both know that that's part of the story. Yes, they're not dreaming is very real.
sure.
It's a problem for the person that you want to address, but it's never the root cause. So I don't care what the disease, the name, the dysfunction, the
Right.
problem may be. There's always a discordance in the field. It's a vibrational imbalance somewhere that needs to be reestablished, which doesn't prevent the person from addressing something at a more physical level. As you said, we can be emergency workers, so to
Yeah.
speak, where something needs to happen right now,
Well,
and you
sure.
can do that. But then you also need to look at the underlayer and do the work to make sure that the pattern is broken, transformed, so it does not reappear in the same fashion with the same symptoms or manifest itself differently somewhere else in the body. So there's always an emotional component to all of the work we do, of course.
Yes, very true. Um, do you have a good example that you can share with us, a testimony from one of your clients or a case that you could share?
Oh gosh, there are quite a few, yes. So that could take a while, but I'll just, pick a couple like this, whatever just comes to mind. But there was a lady that I worked with at West, and those were remote sessions. And I don't even remember exactly how she came about to finding out about um, the Symphony of Me and the work that I do with the Symphony of Me. But she didn't say exactly initially what her problems were or what she thought it was. Just a symptom. She was just curious. And in working with the genius, not only could I feel the energy, scanning the energy, but using the genius, I was able to bring to her some potential scenarios that I could see and see how they fit in her world. And I could see in real time the jaw drop and the colors changing and the nodding and the resonance like yep, 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 I know this, I know this. It's like wow. And it's always rewarding in a way when you work in that fashion with somebody to not only get that feedback but to get accounts such as hers saying, of all the testing that I've done with other modalities, with specialists, doctors of different kind, over the years of agony, doing so many different modalities, this is the first time that I get such a clear picture of what's been going on with me. So, without being a diagnosis or a diagnostic, simply the imprint that you see within the biofield, that in itself is rewarding. And you know as well as I do that awareness is the start of everything. So, from
Right.
the moment you become aware of something, the journey to healing has already started. Your own body intelligence is already working on tweaking things so that you go back to your state of well-being. So that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, that's a
Have
good
to
point
really,
to bring up. Absolutely, that awareness, because a lot of people think, "Oh, I didn't know about this, and now I'm becoming aware of it. This is a bad thing." A lot of people have a bad feeling when they become aware of something they don't know about. But you pointing out that it's a positive thing and that it's the start of healing is an important point. So that's great.
yeah, avoidance is never the solution, although avoidance quite often is more comfortable.
Oh, absolutely. We're
I
all in
can,
avoidance in this
I can
world.
speak from experience.
Yeah.
uh, but the willingness to face the discomfort, maybe, and having the awareness is the start of shifting the energy to changes that will eventually trickle down into your physicality and set you up for an amazing life in the process. So, in the case of this person, there was the awareness, and we continued working. And I could tell the person was really involved with her own healing, which is always the idea.
Mhm.
um, I understand some client will come up with, um, kind of fix me, send me frequencies, do your magic. And while we can do that, the efficiency is greatly increased the moment the persons get involved. It's like, okay, you know what? This is my health. I'm taking full accountability for my health. I'm involved with it. I want to understand. And every time it works so much better. And this person was the perfect example of someone who was really interested, wanted to heal, knew there was an issue, and knew that this was beneficial. Did not exactly know in which way it was, but trusted that there was a change. And wow, the change was really drastic. After 6 sessions, she decided to continue because, I'm seeing the change, I'm feeling the changes in me, and I want to see how far I can take it. And she had lost hope, literally, in changing anything because she had been chasing that problem for so many years. And so we did 8 more sessions. And after a total of, I think it was 9 or 10 sessions or so, she sends me an email. I could sense the excitement within the text of the email saying, I took a walk yesterday. And I'm thinking, okay, so what? So what?
That sounds pretty normal, right?
It sounds pretty normal. And she sends me another email. It's like, no, you don't understand. I need to qualify this. I took a walk for the first time in 15 years and I did 5 miles. And my jaw
What?
just about dropped. I'm like, wow. So, of course, I responded to the email. I always respond to the email, but I was very eager to respond to this one. And the next time we got on a session, she expanded a little bit more. And she had such dramatic changes. She was able to do things that she hadn't done in 15 years. And walking is just one example. There were so many others going along with that. And I'm okay to share a little bit tidbit about myself. Um, some of the issues, it's not the issue. It's always compounded, but the abuse on my body, emotionally, physically, mentally, etc., provided a terrain that was whatever it was that allowed Lyme to become a factor with me. And it's something that is not really very pleasant. That's really hard to chase around and do something with and transform in many ways. And so my journey allowed me to um, not only recognize it, but also help people in those circumstances too. And this person I mentioned just so happened to be one of those. So it's another example where your own experience helps you walk in the shoes of somebody else and have a slightly different perspective that somebody else may not have. And when you bring in our modalities that we talked about with the genius and you put all that into a package together, it's amazing the things that we can achieve. And so
Yeah,
that was one example
that's
of a
awesome.
great outcome and really a fun person to work with.
Yeah, and I bet it made all the difference that she was so committed to her own healing. Like you said, she had really taken on, doing her own qigong, I'm assuming, and really owning it. And so that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And if I may, just for a
Yeah,
minute, I don't know how much time we have
we
on
have a few
our
more minutes. Yeah.
a few more minutes. Um, it's not just things that are persistent that people have had for a long, long time. It can be, but it can also be something more acute. In this case, a person I know, she's actually a friend, and we were not about to do sessions we were talking about other things, and I could tell she was pausing and she was in pain.
Mm.
We were on a Zoom call, so I could tell the facial expressions, and she was really in pain, and she was moving around and getting up. And I asked her, what's happening? She said, I think I'm going to have to cut it short because I'm really in pain. I cannot stand, I cannot sit, I cannot do anything. My spine is hurting, every bone in my body. It's affecting my cognitive ability, my focus. And so it was kind of impromptu, but I told her, it's like, look, I think I can help. As a matter of fact, I know I can help. Are you amenable to it? And she's like, I'd love to. So, well, let's do a session. And so we did a session, and I used a healing integration therapy, and I could feel the resistance along the spine. I could feel also the resistance in her liver, for example. There was huge stagnation in the liver.
Mm.
And we started working, and I could hear I could hear her making noises, almost like somebody receiving a massage and really enjoying herself. That's what it sounded like a little bit. She says, "Eric, you don't understand. I can feel you in real time. This things are shifting so big time. It's like I need to get up." And I see her. It's like, "Wait, we're not done." It's like, "I'm okay. You can do whatever you want. We're working remotely." But she got up. She says, "Eric, you don't understand. I couldn't do this." And she was walking around the room with the computer still on. It's like, this is amazing. And she sent me the one of the best testimonial ever, with a very colorful language. Of, I could literally feel you bitch slapping my spine in real time. I could feel the energy move up my spine and go out my crown. And not only did she have amazing awareness of the energy, but she had amazing results. And I mean, those are the kind of
Awesome.
experiences that are really fun to interact with and to witness. So,
Yeah, that's really fun. I love it when clients can really feel it, and when they don't just go to sleep and and wonder what happened, because that happens a lot of times too. The energy will come into your body and it'll be pretty powerful, and it'll make people relax to the point where they fall asleep in the middle of the treatment. They usually wake up and feel really great, but they don't feel what happened, just the results of it. So that's
you're
fun.
right. It's a totally different experience, and it's the one that's right for them at the time because the
Oh,
body is
sure.
reorganizing, doing what it needs to do. So it's beneficial. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do have some clients where literally the head is bobbing, and
Yeah.
for the entire session it's like, okay, just when you're ready, time to come up, wakey wakey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And
No, I
sometimes
appreciate
it's
that.
easier, as a practitioner to actually treat somebody who is asleep. I think when I was in Energy Workers Academy, there was one person I paired up with, and every single time we did a treatment when she was asleep, because we were in different time zones, and she got really good results from it. So there's something to say for that too. So
Yeah,
anyway,
there is no wrong answer. It's just different ways for different people, and it is what it is. So,
different experiences. Well, this has been great, Eric. Was there anything else that you wanted to share today, that maybe more about how they can find you, or I can put more detail in the
they
description
can
too?
they can find me if they look for me. Of course, Eric, the Symphony of Me is the name of a company, the Symphony of Me, which is really the symphony of you, because that's what it's all about: harmonizing your biofield, making sure that your frequencies are harmonious, just like a concerto. So that's really what it's about. So the Symphony of Me in one word.com is where to find me, find my services. I'm revamping the website. I'm going to have a grand opening on the 28th
All right.
of February. So stay tuned for that. It will be on Facebook, on the Symphony of Me business page, on my personal page also, friends and family. You will receive emails. And yeah, look forward to it. So we're going to talk more about what it is we're doing with the Symphony of Me. And so I
Yeah,
hope that anybody can come join in and experience it. And that's it.
that's awesome. We'll have to do this again. So to be continued until next time.
Well, Karen, you're a wonderful practitioner, and I'm learning a lot from you and from Angel and Keith and Geschicht and everyone. So it's really fun, and I really appreciate you doing these interviews. This is really helpful all the way around. We learn. I learn as much from listening to your interviews as I do from
Oh,
conversing with you or working with clients. So it's a great idea. Thank you.
thank you. Stop the recording.
Sure.